Yes, I do. I have many identities, and I think that one of these identities is European. So I'm from Catalonia, I'm also from Spain. I also consider myself Mediterranean. I feel I have so much in common with Italians, maybe Greek people. And I think that when I travel abroad to the US or China, for example, and I'm with a group of Europeans, they identify us as this common bunch of people with common ways of understanding things about life. So yes, I do identify as European. For me, it was the financial crisis, and I would date it at around 2010. And you know, the crisis affected my family personally. And I think that when this happens, you tend to seek answers. And I really thought that the answer to that crisis, you had to go to Europe, you had to go to Brussels and to the institutions. And I also think that I realized that the European Union or Brussels was a very real power that had to be accounted for, because all of a sudden it was telling the government of Spain what to do, how to spend its budget. And you know, it's not a judgment on what I think about the issue. Further than that, I think that it's, you know, you realize there is a power that is important, that is affecting your life. So that's when I took an interest in how the European Union runs. The worst moment would be the deal with Turkey, but also what comes before. So the deal with Turkey at the end, what it means is that Europe failed to agree on a migration policy when the wave of refugees and migrants were coming in. And I think it was a massive collective failure that happened, that all countries laid out their cards on the table. And you really could see that there was no possible solution on that. And in the end, the answer was, like in the worst cases in this situation, in my opinion, is just let's reinforce the borders so that the people don't come in and we don't have this problem. And I think it's, personally, I think from a human rights point of view, it's a terrible realization, thing to think. And that's why I think that it was a really bad deal. The best moment would be when Emmanuel Macron won the elections in France. And I think we have been very also pessimistic ourselves about the European Union, because we also always think that European elections are really national elections in the end. People don't care about Europe. Our politicians tend to avoid talking about Europe in political campaigns, and there you see that there's this leader that is trying to get elected with a very open and message about the European Union, talking about it. And also I think it's good that there was this shake-up of the political scene, the political parties in France, and you saw that what came after this shake-up was not populism nor demagogy, I would say, but instead it was a pro-European movement. So I think that's something that gives you some sort of hope. And also, I should add, he's a reformist, so that's also good. At least he's many expectations placed upon himself, obviously, but he's trying to reform. So personally, since I am working in international relations or global affairs, I think that the most important thing that the European Union has done is having this freedom of movement, being able, for example, to settle in another country if I want to, or traveling freely and easily and facilitating that, studying abroad. And I think that also imagine that if the situation gets hard in Spain and there's a lack of opportunities, for example, I would be able to go somewhere else. And it's not that I have to, but that gives me some security and some comfort. So I think that for me it would be the climate transition, or reaching maybe zero emissions is too much, but a lower emission target. And I think that many of the debates that we have, if you think about, I don't know, the situation with Russia in defense, or the rise of China, all of this doesn't matter too much if in the long run we don't have a planet. So that's why I think it's a very important issue, and I think that the European Union has been trying to lead that in the international scene, and if it is successful, I think it would be an important message and an important stance for the organization to say we have achieved that and we have led that transition. I feel that Europe is still very much values construction. It's based on values, and one of these values should be this ecological transition. And you know, in my previous answers, you've seen how some of these values, like in terms of migration, diversity, have been abandoned. But instead, there are some of these values or leadership that the European Union might have that I think that should stay, and that the European Union should uphold. And I think that climate change is an opportunity, and obviously it's massively complicated and it cannot do it by itself. It needs a Paris Agreement, it needs all this multilateral action, and you know, it needs to have some commitment from China, from the US. It's like very difficult, but I think that it shouldn't abandon the ambition or the target because it's difficult, or because the other powers don't respond to it.